And a very good afternoon, everyone. Welcome aboard. Welcome to by right, it's our first program for China as a publisher. And thanks for our collaborator, Tintabudi, for the work. And here we are with our speakers, Sidi Mohd Yusof, and our keynote speech giver, Dr. Akram. Just to note you here that the first, we would like to appoint Dr. Akram to deliver his keynote speech address that will be delivered bilingual, and then also Sidi Mohd Yusof will somehow a little bit bilingual, but yes, as his presentation we can see it's all in English. So if you've got any concern, questions, just raise your hand, and we'll be having some dialogue at the end of the presentation. So please, I hope you are very keen of this program, and please enjoy yourself. Our first presenter, Dr. Akram.
Okay. Thank you very much, Terima kasih. I welcome all of you. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin wa bihi nasta'in. Allahumma aftah alaina hikmataka wa anshur alaina min qada'i rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin. Allah rabbana zidna ilman. Allah rabbi habli hikmah wal hikmi bis salihin. First of all, thank you very much for your time to attend for this discourse organized by Chakna and our honorable speaker here, Dr. Sidi Mohd Yusof, yang akan membicarakan his book actually yang sudah diluncurkan, been published last year actually, the same month, bulan Mei di PBAKL Kuala Lumpur. Jadi when Mr. Ahnaf asking me to deliver a keynote, saya terus menyatakan persetujuan I agree, okay, untuk to become a welcoming speech untuk meraihkan, okay, perbicaraan as all you can see here in the slide presentation just now, the title, topic of our discourse this evening. We are dealing with the myth of our time. Maybe some of us been heard the word myth or mythology itself. Jadi sebelum saya menyerahkan perbicaraan, when I pass before I pass to Dr. Sidi to continue to deliver his lectures to enhance or to empower our discuss this evening, saya ingin memberi sedikit appreciation a little bit, okay, from his work, okay, as all you can see here, okay, the vision of unity. Okay, for those who already read this this work, okay, this book been launched last year. Okay, sedikit sebanyak Dr. Sidi ada mengupas with he categorized the three components. I think is very monumental and integral for us to understand our worldview, our self-view of human being. Yeah, we're dealing with culture, we're dealing with thinking, we're dealing with myth as well. Jadi kalau boleh saya memberi sedikit kupasan ataupun ulasan ringkas, okay, sebagai orang yang telah mencermati, yang telah membaca, menekuni this work from Dr. Sidi, okay, beliau membahagikan, he categorized the works in his book, starting from the civitas, I think Latin ini, civitas, followed, continued by noesis, and ended with mythos. Jadi ketiga-tiga komponen itu yang mungkin menjadi serapan ataupun the main inspiration for his speech after this is all about myth. Jadi kalau saya boleh buat sedikit gambaran awal bagaimana Dr. Sidi itu mensynthesize the component of civitas. We are dealing with people, we are dealing with society, we are dealing with culture, okay, yang kita katakan mungkin perkara-perkara yang bersifat eksternal, okay, how we dealing dengan masyarakat, itu dikunci lock with the words, with the term civitas. Okay, kemudian pada bahagian yang kedua, he dealing with the thought, especially in the philosophical discourse. Ada beberapa tokoh yang dikupas, baik itu Western philosopher, also Eastern philosopher, especially our great philosopher yang baru saja meninggal last month, Professor Syed Muhammad Nakib Awatas. Okay, we are dealing with noisy, the human thought, pemikiran internal. Dan pada saya, kalau saya dapat conclude ataupun I can make inference from his categories in this book, A Vision of Unity, pada bab yang terakhir, Dr. Sidi menyentuh tentang myth, yang mana itu sebenarnya semangat kemanusiaan as human. We are dealing with sign, we are dealing with meaning, yang mana itu berakar daripada kebudayaan, daripada kefalsafan, bahkan juga our pegangan, our belief system. Kerana myth itu berakar ataupun berpunca, ditumbuhi daripada unsur-unsur kebudayaan, kepercayaan. Dan itu saya kira yang menjadi the main essence for his talk today. Jadi kita cuba meraihkan, kita cuba menghidupkan. We try to empower the good dialectics today. Dalam kesempatan yang ada, saya juga I'm very grateful tengok ramai juga yang sudi berkenan hadir untuk diskusi begini. Okay, we are not only discuss the books that wrote by Dr. Sidi, tetapi juga kita cuba mengupas fikiran, okay, with a very good dialogues, and I hope ada dialektik yang sangat segar, yang sangat fresh, dan juga mungkin ada suntikan-suntikan originality. Okay, tapi dalam masa yang sama, kalau masing-masing melihat, as you can see in the promotion posters, Dr. Sidi ada juga mengusahakan other two books. I believe will be launched ataupun akan diluncurkan pada PBAKL yang terdekat end of this month. Okay, the book title of yang first, I think the translation of Carl Gustav Jung, one of the prominent psychologists. Okay, terjemahan daripada buku dia, Modern Man Seeking for the Manusia Moden dalam Pencarian Jiwa. Itu transliterasi pada alih aksara in bahasa Melayu. Okay, and the other one, the compilations of the psychological discourse organized by Persatuan Pendidikan Falsafah dan Pemikiran Malaysia last year. Okay, kita adakan siri-siri, the series of psychological discourse, dan kita himpunkan menjadi satu naskah, kita jilidkan, yang diberi judul Psyche and Psychology. Okay, the soul and the inspiration ataupun the knowledge of it. Okay, itu yang bakal menemui masing-masing pendengar ataupun peserta hari ini, insyaAllah. Jadi I think without any further ado, kita juga nak dengar apa yang cuba dibahaskan dalam konteks mitos. Maybe from the etymology itself, okay, the roots of meaning by myth yang akan dibicarakan, yang akan disampaikan oleh Dr. Sidi Mohd Yusof after this. Okay, as all you can see, when I see the title and then the subtitle, Dr. Sidi tulis the eternal recurrence. For those who familiar with Nietzsche work, okay, Nietzsche always reiterate this kind of terms, eternal recurrence. Okay, bagaimana perulangan abadi itulah yang menjadi satu kesan ataupun satu kemunduran ataupun satu hal yang sangat enigmatic. Okay, when Nietzsche try to come up with his own idea of Übermensch or Superman. Jadi I think without any further ado, saya serahkan kepada Dr. Sidi. I pass this mic to Dr. Sidi Mohd Yusof to start with his discourse, with our discourse this evening. Okay, the myth of our time. Jadi saya persilakan dengan penuh rasa proud dan hormat kepada Dr. Sidi untuk meneruskan wacana, and after he finish his lecture or his discourse, kita akan buka kepada ruang pembicaraan, maybe Q&A session, okay, untuk memberi nyala, memberi kehangatan kepada wacana petang ini. Semoga kita mendapat inspirasi dan juga manfaat daripada majlis ilmu petang ini. Okay, saya silakan.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good evening. First and foremost, I would like to extend my deepest gratitude to all members of the floor who spent their evening, not just any evening, Saturday evening, discussing about this topic for today. So I really appreciate all of you being here today. Hopefully it will be a very productive discourse together. And of course, I would like to extend my deepest gratitude to Associate Professor Dr. Akram for agreeing to join with us today and delivered such, I think, such a touching keynote address. Dr. Akram has been there since the very launching of the book, even since last year, and for that I will be forever in gratitude with him. And I would also like to say thank you to Tintabudi for providing such a splendid place for our discourse today. I can say that throughout my years in Dublin and also in London, that I think there are only a few bookshops that are as splendid as this one, right? And I've already been mesmerized looking at it from the internet, but being here physically for the first time, it's certainly a vibe lah. It's certainly I would say totally different lah, and that's why Dua Lipa is coming, right? I heard this year. And of course, I would like to thank my publisher Chana, who has been very daring in approaching me and asking me to publish this book, A Vision of Unity. I know it's a very niche genre and it's a very challenging one, but with their hard work and also smart work, and I'm really happy that the readership of the book is not just within Malaysia, but also in Indonesia, some in New Zealand, and in the UK and in Ireland. And I'm also very glad to share with the members of the floor that the book will be made available in some of the selected public libraries in Selangor, and more to come in our southern states, inshallah, one day, right? So, a little bit about myself before we jump into the topic of today. My name is Sidi Mohd Yusof bin Azli Shah. I'm a medical officer in the Department of Psychiatry, Hospital Canselor Tuanku Muhriz, University Kebangsaan Malaysia in Kuala Lumpur. I graduated from the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland, in Dublin, under the RCSI UCD Malaysian Campus program. My clinical interest is psychodynamic psychotherapy, where two names that will be hearing quite frequently today, which is Sigmund Freud and Carl Gustav Jung. Both of them are main proponents of psychodynamic psychotherapy. My other clinical interest is transcultural psychiatry, or some would say cross-cultural psychiatry. So the transcultural psychiatry is a sub-discipline within psychiatry where we investigate or we inquire the different kind of manifestation of psychiatric symptoms across different cultures. So this, I think the topic of today is right up my alley in relation with my clinical interest. So yeah, the topic for today, in the midst of our time, it's, I would say, the one-liner or the main thesis for today's talk is that I would like to argue that the archetypes, the myths, the symbols of days yore remain as ever relevant as of today, including in my clinical practice. So the subtitle, Eternal Recurrence, yes, it's paying homage to Nietzsche's words. And what I'm trying to say that the archetypes would recur again and again, even though no matter how much civilized we are, how much modern we think that we are, and I will demonstrate some of the example to show that the archetypes are evergreen, and I would say that eternally recur, right? So the objectives for today are threefold. The first agenda will be a brief introduction on the book, A Vision of Unity. The second part is on a little bit on mythopoiesis. I'll be discussing a little bit more on that. Mythopoiesis, or the literal meaning, is the self-creation of narration or mythos, which I think is a lost treasure, which no longer, I think, being practiced in modern society. Why? We would discuss on it a bit later. And the third part is, I think, the most interesting part, and perhaps the reason many of you are coming today, is to inquire on the roles of cultural, religious, and also mythological symbols in clinical practice of today. So moving on with the first agenda, the book, A Vision of Unity, Selected Writings on History, Politics, Philosophy and Literature, is actually my maiden work. It is actually a compilation of my writings and my contemplation on several key thinkers, which and listed, which are depicted on your right side. And this period of writing spans from 2019 to 2024. This period of 4 years is my so-called double pinning years, where I spend most of my times in these two locations during the 5 years. And I think it's very hard to not get infected with the cloudy weathers of Dublin. It's always either cloudy or rainy or windy, all right? So it's really not hard to get infected with the contemplative mood Dublin really gets you on. So this period between 2019 and 2024 is actually an intensification of my intellectual and also my spiritual journey. So what this book actually trying to display is that I'm trying to capture the underlying theme of unity by these key thinkers across different layers of different phases of human life. The book is divided into 3 parts: Civitas, Noesis, and Mythos. And a little bit on the word unity. So unity is a contrast of singularity. So singular or single means an isolated, discrete, separated entity. But unity as Proclus, a Greco-Roman philosopher, said that unity, the word unity itself is implying that it is already pregnant with multiple possibilities or entities within it, right? So this work is actually a kind of a meta-analysis, or kind of analyzing what are the underlying themes and what are the unifying themes behind these different authors. You can see they are from the right side of the spectrum, such as Kissinger or Huntington, and they also on the center left, like Thomas Howell and so on, right? So briefly, the Civitas is involved about our civilization, a part of human nature, namely history and philosophy. So it is actually trying to see whether there's any emerging or unifying theme behind your skepticism on one hand, and the other hand is your reactionary and revisionism. Noesis is actually me trying to investigate the default metaphysical outlook in Western philosophy. In this cover, I've put the painting, the School of Athens by the Italian painter Raphael. So you have a person pointing upwards towards the heaven, and that is Plato. And the next to him is someone pointing downwards, and that is your Aristotle. So the Platonic and the Aristotelian system is the default philosophical system, and subsequent thinkers in Western philosophy is trying either to position themselves in the Platonic camp or the Aristotelian camp, right? So the Western philosophical thought, I would say, essentially dualistic. They either preponderate more on the mind or either in the body, right? So in this second part, I'm trying to advance an alternative paradigm, which is instead of the dualistic philosophy, it is the relational metaphysics, right? I've included several of authors such as Edmund Husserl. So Edmund Husserl is a German Jewish philosopher, but he, in terms of philosophy, he identified himself more on the relational metaphysics, right? It's not the mind or the body, but it's the relation that would elucidate both mind and body, right? And the third part of the book, which is Mythos, is basically an examination of Japanese literary authors. So I've identified there's at least broadly 2 of them. You have the classical authors represented by Natsume Soseki, Junichiro Tanizaki, Ryosuke Akutagawa, right? And on the other hand is your modern, or rather your postmodern writers such as Haruki Murakami. And I think the distinct characteristic that the Japanese authors always write is that they always use the everyday occurrences or the everyday happenstances in life. For example, Mon, the novel Gate, wrote by Natsume Soseki, is basically it's a novel about a couple discussing about your daily life while in leisure or after dinner, right? So, and Haruki Murakami, as representing the second type of Japanese author, he also used the normal everyday occurrences. But the way that Murakami and other postmodern writers is writing reality is as if they describe reality from the end of the telescope. I would say it's either rather monotonous, tepid, right, and rather too much of apathy, right? But the differences between Natsume Soseki Smon and the writings of Haruki Murakami, while they both use the everyday occurrences, but the writings of the classical authors, they imbue meaning in the your daily life, your occurrences of daily life. But rather in Murakami, you have this kind of apathy, monotonous, sepia-like way of describing the world. So basically, what I gather from my analysis between of these two lines of authors is that there is a meaning-making structure in literature, and of course, as literature describes about human, thus there must also a meaning-making structure in human existence, which is present before and not so much maybe in our current postmodern world. All right. So it's about so the bulk of the talk is about the third part, which is the mythos. So we are trying to inquire about meaning-making structures. So I'm trying to argue that the meaning-making structure at the personal level is what we call as mythopoiesis, and at the collective level, we can see that this meaning-making apparatus is mediated through your cultural, your religious, and also mythological symbols. Okay. So before we inquire on what is the meaning-making structure in action, I would like to give or provide a little bit of philosophical preliminary discussion on this. So why and how humans would have these meaning-making structures. So it is essentially boils down to one central question, that is how human existence is different from others. And definitely across time, across history, you have different versions of regarding the answer. But the one that I would like to share with all of you would be one provided by Heidegger. So Martin Heidegger is a German philosopher. He's a nasty man. He's a bad man actually. He's a supporter of Nazism. But of course, we cannot appeal to ad hominem and just discard his ideas, right? So Heidegger, in his magnum opus Being Time, he asked the same question, and the answer that he provided is that in comparison with other kind of existence such as rocks, buildings, cars, our human existence is radically different from others, because we are the only being whose its own being existence is an issue. In other words, that we are the only being that is concerned about our own existence. So rocks can be there for hundreds of years, even after it disintegrated to sand, and it wouldn't bother at all. But we humans are very anxious. We are constantly thinking about our needs, how to fulfill it, how to propagate our needs, how to move from one needs to another, right? So we are essentially a being that is concerned about our own existence. And there's two essential points that shows how and why we are concerned about ourselves. Firstly, because we are a being who are actively engaging in the world. Everywhere in the world, we will never see a world that it is not imbued with some kind of awareness, right? So the cars that we drove is not just another car, but it is a car that perhaps we first drove and then almost crashed when we first learning to drive. The hammer or the necklace that we wear, it's not just your generic necklaces, but it's something imbued with memories of your ancestors. And the girl or the boy that you love is not just another girl or another boy, but someone that you choose, you create memories, and also you cherish the memories together, right? So everywhere the world is being presented as distinctly ours or minus, and that's why we have this inherent or fundamental care, which Heidegger mentioned, concern about our own existence. And secondly, not just we find a world that we are actively relating to it, but this world that essentially mine has an expiry date. So comparing with the poor rocks, right? So the rocks can be there for 500 years, it wouldn't bother after it's turned into sand, or it's still on the land, or it's already within under the sea. It will not be bothered. But compared to us, we are a creature who are acutely cognizant or conscious about our approaching end, right? And in a way, thinking about our expiry date give human existence meaning. I would like to draw an idea from Urban Yalom. philosopher, psychologist in the existential psychotherapy line of thought. He said that imagine if humankind does not have any death, right? So if we live eternally, then there's no point in successes, love, failures, sadness, right? Because we can always try again, right? But because of this essential temporal nature of our existence, this acute realization that we have an end, that everything within or before the end possess meaning. So what I'm trying to say that these two matters, we find a world that we are actively engaged in it, and secondly, we are conscious about our end. These are the things that forces us to always seek meaning before the expiry date. But of course, Doctor, to live continuously conscious about, we have the utter responsibility to always engage in our world authentically is too much of responsibility most of the time. And to be ever conscious about our death is too much of anxiety inviting. And that's why most of us would retreat into this fortress of childlike defaultness, which Heidegger called as everydayness. All right. So we live in a bubble that the German philosopher called as Umwelt, assumptive world. We wake up, we assume that the sun will always rise from the east. We always assume that our loved one will be with us forever, and we believe that everything that we experience today will continue on forever and ever. But we forgot one thing. Even though that the things that we experience, the things that we relate, are being presented as essentially mine, but it remains as an objective thing. So when we drive a car, the car, yes, we are driving the car, but the car also has some other possibilities, such as people can knock it over, someone can scratch it and things like that, right? And when things in our daily life started to not function within the Umwelt or the assumptive world, Heidegger said it turned uncanny. Right? And for Heidegger, it's a good thing, because if before we are living in this default everydayness where we have no any impetus to revise our assumption and so on, but these occasions of uncanniness allows us to explore further possibilities a thing can offer. So it is a gateway, even though through the anxiety and all, it is a gateway for a deeper, authentic life, right? But of course, working in the mental health industry, when there are an utter disintegration of the Umwelt, such as the passing of loved ones, natural disaster, things like that, where there are assumptive world, the bubble completely shattered, then it can turn into a neurosis or mass neurosis, right? So essentially, the preliminary discussion on the human existence is to say that we have the fundamental character of active relationality and cognizant of our death, and that's why we have this desire or urge to always make meaning, right? And the desire of meaning making appears in two types. The first one is mythopoiesis, and the second one, which we'll examine later, right? So this is actually my synthesis of being in time. I delivered this talk at the previous course, but the modern European philosophy course. I think held last month. So we had a section by section reading on being in time, and this is the prose. Heidegger's prose is famously difficult. I have schizophrenic patients who write better than him. It's very challenging, all right. But we try to dissect together, and this is the synthesized model from Heidegger's Being and Time. So moving on to the second agenda, which is mythopoiesis, as I mentioned, is a way of meaning making at a personal level. So unfortunately, as Dr. Saiful Akram has mentioned, that unfortunately myths, as understood by us modern humans, are associated with things that are fabricated, that are not true, artificial, and perhaps fictitious. But as I think Karen Armstrong pointed it out, mythos is actually one of the two main ways of knowledge acquisition. let's think about it, right? The world, our reality is not just about doing rational things, filing our taxes, engage in some kind of entertainment, doing rational decision on our financial decision, things like that, right? I would even say that most of our reality are conducted via non-rational processes, right? But the hypertrophy of Western rationalization eventually push this non-rational function to the side, and in turn it cause or incite what Young call as overcompensation as a relation to this one-sidedness. Just because there are things that as we just said, right, there are things that cannot be shown but must be felt. So ethics about doing things that are right, about love, about art, all right. So these are the ones that evolve in mythos, right? The meaning making through rational function, right? But unfortunately, I would say that we are the first generation in human history that do not have initiation rituals. So anthropological society, we call it almost all of the primitive society, they have some kind of initiation rituals, and these initiation rituals help the adolescents to transition from their idyllic childlike world into a world of meaning, right? If before they can always play around, things like that, but during the initiation rituals, they will be taught about their roles, their position as a microcosmos, as a part of macrocosmos, right? So after the initiation rites, that now adults are living no longer in a profane world, but a world imbued with meaning, right? Everything that they do, whether they hunt, whether they make love, whether they have children, everything is imbued with sacredness, right? But unfortunately, in our days, this initiation result, the tender age where these initiation rites were usually done, which is around the adolescent years, replaced by mandatory education. And definitely there's a lot of achievement done via the modern education program, right? But to think from the perspective of the adolescent as well, they finish their study, they're done the convocation and hold a diploma, things like that, and now they are expected to bear the brunt of living entirely on their square. But we haven't prepared them to perhaps inquire on what is love, what is companionship, what is the difference between happiness and gratification, right? And in results, there would instead of man and woman as before sanctioned through the initiation rituals, graduated from child into man and woman. Unfortunately, we have lots of man-child and woman-child, right? So I would say that this is caused by the loss of mythopoiesis, the meaning-making, the active meaning-making apparatus at the personal level, right? So to a point that I've met several patients who are so paralyzed in making sense or orientate themselves in their daily life that that I think the Western field psychologists were scampering around. They have to some kind of put forth an alternative paradigm to operationalize about meaning. So the person who is trying to appear as happy as he can is Martin Seligman. He is one of the founder of positive psychology. So interestingly, Seligman and through the works of his other colleagues, they found that there's a paradox happening not just in the West but also all across the world. We are becoming more prosperous, but the level of happiness does not increase as much as we expected from the level of prosperity. So hence the paradox. So there are several foundational studies such as the non-study where the psychologists notice that the nuns or people who live with modest or non-glamorous occupation have higher rates of happiness, right? And Seligman and his colleagues went about all across the world trying to see what are the related themes that make people who live modestly but much more happiness and more gratified than all your Wall Street and all of your rich politicians, things like that. and they came up with this VIA strength survey. So I think there's about 24 or 30 strength. So to that extent, we have to operationalize meaning, right? So when we have to operationalize meaning. So when so the paradigm that the positive psychology is trying to say that even if you are stuck, even if you are burnt out, then you can always appeal to your strengths, and then you will feel gratified, and then you can carry on with your days, right? And interestingly, the way these are investigated or found throughout all the cultures. They went to the east, went to the west, and they come up with these 24 or 30 strengths, right? So in a way, this is kind of archetypes, right? Because archetype is the universal symbols and patterns, right? But this is our emotional archetypes, right? And I think this is one of the set turning points in our history where the meaning-making apparatus at the personal level is not there. That we have to operationalize the meaning-making, right? But the research evidence on this are quite robust. I think there's a Philadelphia school study where they they teach about this character and how to use the character, right? So I think the level of gangsterism, about the truancy, absenteeism, actually much improved, including the rates of teenage pregnancy, right? It appears to me that it is not that the younger generation are not cognizant about this thing. It's just that they are very hungry. All this while about 100,000 years of history of modern human history, where there have always been an institution of meaning being put on. But here we are, the first generation, that there are no whatsoever formalization or formal meaning making being taught to us. So they are hungry for meaning, right? But unfortunately, the modern society does not provide this, except in such corners such as Tintabudi, things like that, where discourses are happening, right? So the people are hungry, doctor, but unfortunately we can't, at this point of time, we can't supply that at the collective level. So now moving on to the collective level, so we'll be talking about archetypes in clinical practice more in detail, but again, just to give you guys a background of what is archetypes. So archetypes is basically the universal motifs that is found across cultures. So one of the first mention of archetypes in terms of psychology was by Adolf Bastian. So he is also an anthropologist, so he discovered all these recurring myths and patterns, right? So one of the, I think, bigger names that introduced the archetype squarely in the field of psychology would be Carl Gustav Jung. So my translation of Modern Man in Search of a Soul does not just include the translation, but I also included about 40 pages of introduction elucidating on how Jung arrived to the young, alright? So there's a lot of things happening, or we say baggages happening when he was young that made him led quite an introspective life, right? So when Jung finally graduated and became a psychiatrist, so he was stationed at Bugojli Hospital under the mentorship of another prominent psychiatrist called Eugen Bleuler. So Eugen Bleuler has a study going on, which is word association study, and Jung participated in it. So word association study is where you ask patients, usually psychotic patients, to repeat a set of words. So when say trauma, then the patient has to repeat trauma, right? But the word association study, the hypothesis that they noticed that some of the patients were unable to completely or accurately reproduce the words. So they either they talk about something else, or they shivered, they showed physical response to it, or they remain silent, right? So Bleuler and Jung stipulated that perhaps the patients wanted to mention the words, but there are some extraneous or autonomous thing happening inside the psyche that prevents the conscious self to utter these words, right? Hence the origin of Jung's idea of complexes, right? So Jung believed complexes are your separated or autonomous complexes, kind of like a mini character of you, right? Inside the psyche, which is supposed to represent a primordial part of things, right? Part of it would be the self, right? So the self, and also there is also the complexes of mother and father, all right? And there is also many other kinds of complexes, all right? So these are the origin of the concepts of archetypes. And furthermore, after his study on the word association study, he went and delivered his finding to Freud. And Freud was very, very happy about it, right? Because the word association study, in a way, gave his idea of psychoanalysis, which was very new at that time, kind of an empirical standing. So they were best friends for about 5 years, I think. And then sooner or later, Jung appreciated that his way, his orientation, his worldview is radically different from Freud. And then they separated later lah, right? So and then Jung went into this what we call as the creative illness of his time. He went deep. He went into the Gnostic, Christian Gnostic literature. He analyzed his patient's dream. He analyzes his own dreams, and he do these specific methods called as active imagination, right? Where he would engage with certain personalities of within himself. So it sounds like so much of pseudoscience, but this active imagination is also being practiced by us today, by psychiatrists and clinical psychologists, especially in narrative therapy or in schema therapy, right? Where we would, in a way like Inception, we went back to the traumatic experience, and then we asked the patient to went through the traumatic memories back, but we as therapists will be there as the healthy adults and will try to, in a way, to put a new sequel to it, right? Because as much as we, the body, experience the trauma, so the body needs another experience to unwind the trauma, right? So active imagination has its ground in modern clinical therapy. In a nutshell, this is the background on archetypes lah, and it is still relevant in today's clinical practice. More specific examples will follow, right? So at the collective level, there must be, certain cultures have their own ways of expressing distress. So as I mentioned, transcultural psychiatry investigates how psychiatric manifestation differs across cultures, all right? And how exactly, why we ended up picking up our cultural symbols, even though we are now modern, or we haven't even heard about it. We haven't even heard about it. Yeah. So this model, which was done by, I actually compiled it from the works of Norman Sartorius and also Lawrence Kameyer. Both are giants in transcultural psychiatry. So they are actually trying to explain why people keep returning back to these cultural symbols, right? So it started with our own body, right? Your body right now, right? So maybe if you went back, then you can try this. Put away the book, put away your phone, and you notice that your body has a kind of noise or background signal. You feel ache here lah, a little bit of itch here lah, right? So the body exerts some kind of noise, even at default, right? And this is yet a symptom, but it is a symptomizable experience, right? So when there are a trigger happening, right, it would trigger this a cascade of what we call as looping effect. So the trigger can be unusual quality or intensity, or suddenly the itch is too much, or the pain is too much, there's functional impairment, right? Sometimes there's several of my patients who are authors suddenly feel one of their finger twitch when they want to write, right? So there's a functional impairment, or there are contiguity with other events, or say they start to cough, and that the next door someone coughing with blood, so they think, oh, right. So these triggers is what Heidegger called as uncanniness, right? So and then the symptomizable experience will get amplified by several things. You have the cultural prototypes, and it's really interesting that even in this 21st century, psychologists or anthropologists are still talking about prototypes, right? Prototype is just, for me, is another name for archetypes, right? So cultural prototypes are still there. It functions as a metaphoric resonance, right? So when someone is like, oh, suddenly, my shop, not much of people is coming, the next shop is too much, and then they will resonate with all these guna, black magic, santau, things like that, right? So they are the prototype. Prototypes are these salient images or events, right, that we pick up culturally, right? So these are the cultural prototypes, right? And there are some cognitive mechanism in place as well. So you have the attentional. So when you are worried about things, you increase your attention to it, and then it will increase the intensity of your worry. All right. So it's like a vicious cycle. You have also an automatic or attributional mechanism. Means that if we feel itch, immediately we will scratch over our skin, right? So we immediately attribute cause to our this abnormal sensation, and of course there you have the emotional component of it, right? So when we started to think, oh, got guna lah, got santau lah, then we started to getting emotion, then all of these will be amplified, right? That's why you call as amplifiers. And that it results into this escalating distress and arousal, right? So you have the social feedback loops, right? So basically, I would say a simple example would be hysteria, right? So for some reason, it always happen in boarding school, right? So it can start with one person, one person feeling a little bit off, or maybe one of the examples that I got, one of the previous experience that macam it all started with someone dump the trash a bit too late in the night, right? And then tomorrow someone got sick. So there you go. You have your trigger, you have the uncanniness, and it got amplified, all right? And that when one person started to get into trance, all right, and perhaps the person already have some kind of psychiatric vulnerability under stress, then they got into trance. Because you have the social feedback loops, then the whole female asrama got into hysteria, things like that, right? So these are the social feedback loops, right? And at the end of the day, it will form into this eco-social niche, right? So when enough people are demonstrating enough uniform experiences, it would crystallize into a psychiatric diagnosis, right? Like schizophrenia, you have your delusion, hallucination, right? When more people, enough people are demonstrating the symptoms, it will fossilize into a diagnosis, right? And of course, when more informally at the cultural level, so when enough similar instances happening, then it would concretize into this CCD or cultural concept of distress, right? So the essential point to be taken home behind this model is that we are not just a receptive creature. We are a creature that is actively looking for meaning, right? We find, we have the attributional, we have the attentional mechanism. We are a being that always look for meaning. What is happening? When we scratch, we don't immediately know, this is from the lies or things like that. We will search for it, right? When the cause cannot be found in the physical body, and then you go into your cultural prototypes and things like that, right? So even at the psychological level, as shown by this model by Sartorius and Kumeyer, it shows that human are essentially a meaning-making being, right? So relating to a more concrete form of in the clinical practice, right? So we have the cultural prototypes, right? So you have your already present archetypes, means that as a Malay, a Chinese, an Indian, or a European, you already have this a set of your cultural exemplars or prototypes, right? And that's why when neurosis or psychosis happen, you will again use the same mechanism to recruit your cultural prototypes, and then your manifestation of psychiatric symptoms would be in the form of these embedded cultural motifs or symbols, right? So we have the amok. The amok is quite specific among the Malay people. You have the demonic possession, which I think is ubiquitous throughout all the world. And interestingly, we have the lycanthropy. So lycanthropy is actually a legit psychiatric diagnosis. It's a delusional belief where someone believes that they are turning into a wolf, just to demonstrate the universal nature of archetypes. In France and also in England, where wolves are the main predators, there are more instances, reports of lycanthropy. But in Russia, where the bears are an issue, then you have more reports of people turning into bear instead of wolf. And in Africa, it's more on hyenas. And of course, in your Indic, Sinic, and Nusantara sphere, we are more about tigers. So we have people turning into tigers, right? Harimau jadian, right? So harimau jadian, okay? So, but on the other hand, as I mentioned before, we humans are also still open to further possibilities. We are getting more globalized, things like that. So there are possibilities that we would get more we will get more and more psychiatric symptoms that is originally from different cultures, right? So two things that I put here is, the first one is hikikomori. So hikikomori was previously known as a distinctly Japanese phenomenon. It is hikikomori is where the adolescents or adolescents of young adults, they refuse to go out. They would spend years even inside their rooms. They would do everything there, eat there, sleep there, and do everything over there. And that's why you have this sad phenomenon of people actually dying inside the house, right? But it is commonly known as a response towards the collapse of Japanese economic bubble in the 1980s, I think. And in response, people are in response of this adversity, these Japanese young adults cook themselves inside their room most of the time for years. But as we had similar issues across all the world, we started to see more and more of similar happenstances to occur. So I've seen cases where school refusal, right, among children and adolescents. They wouldn't go out. Cannot go out to school. So kind of resembling of hikikomori. So in UKM, we are getting experts from Japan, to actually lecture us, educate us on hikikomori, because it's quite bad, right? We have a perpetual cadres of our psychiatric patients among children and adolescents. They are unable to function, right? So we are asking them their help to help educate us about hikikomori. And of course, the poster is I think it's quite a famous Netflix movie. It's about adolescence, which is about incel culture, which I would describe a little bit more later. So in contrast of the embedded manifestation of archetypes from embedded or native cultures, we also have an emergent archetypes in response to our more globalized society, right? This is a little bit, maybe we have a little bit of more time still. So in describing harimau jadian, right? So the harimau jadian is quite an issue here, not just here in the Nusantara and also in India and China, right? I think the earliest mention was by the Dutch who already conquered the Malacca, and they were saying that the natives are complaining about harimau jadian, were tigers, right? So it's been there at least even before the 1600s, right? So the harimau jadian is a ubiquitous theme among the Malays, and especially among the Minangkabau people. I am a Minangkabau, one of the Minangkabau, right? So we are originally from the Western Sumatra. So a specific population of Minangkabau is called as the Kerinci people. It is debatable, either they are still Minangkabau or they are an offshoot of the Minangkabau people. So I have this case of a young lady. Again, all cases are anonymized. This is for education only, just to demonstrate to all of you that the cultural symbols are still alive today, right? So this patient never heard about the folklore of Minangkabau before. I think she's like third or fourth generation already. But when she got into the psychotic break, if you can imagine, I was talking with her normally, and then she started to growl at me, and that turned like a tiger, right? What I can do is just scream, right? So it's a new, right? It's a new thing for me, right? So when we inquired on why exactly, right? So the tigers, according to anthropologists, was actually not a creature of deep forest. So tigers were actually a creature of boundary between civilized life and also deep forest. So in response to agriculture, things like that, so natural habitats are getting devastated. So people will plant crops, right? So the animals from the deep forest will come, like deer, things like that, to eat the crops. So the tiger eventually know about this. So the tiger would hide in between the crops, crop field, and also the forest, right? So the tiger, as known by the Minangkabaus, are not a creature of deep forest. Perhaps different from in India or China, but among the Minangkabaus, it is a creature of liminality or boundary or transition, right? My patient actually suffered multiple relationship issues, right? And again, the metaphoric resonances, right? So as much as she's sitting at the boundary between a married life and a spinster, right? And that's why he, in her psychotic episode, recruited the symbol of tiger, because tiger is a symbol of liminality, transition, right? Boundaries, right? So this is one of many examples I have among the Chinese. I have patients who are talking to me about sand demon and pig demon, and I say, okay, but then I remember the show during the evening at TV8 is about Journey to the West. Then I started to open the book and I say, oh, there you go. There's your sand demon and pig demon. And when I read about it, that sand demon eventually, both of them committed great sins, but at the end of the day, the sand demon able to attain salvation, but the pig demon, even though he also helped in the journey to the West, but because of his many continuous sins, he did not get salvation lah. And that there's a personal specific related to the patient, and when she got better and we mentioned this to her, and then she said, it's right, I am thinking about this, right, back in my mind, things like that. And it helped with her adherence to our medication, our treatment plan, things like that, right? So it's not thinking or understanding about myth. It's not just about having deliberative function or to further or deeper our understanding about our patient, but it also help in the management as well, right? So the second part is about incel culture. So incel culture is incel is actually a derogatory word. It's not nice to mention the word incel, but for now we don't have any specific term for it. So incel stands for involuntary celibate. So this is a very fresh research by Brian Van Ronde and Chris Taylor. They investigated about this culture, right? So involuntary celibate describes a situation, briefly, is about young adolescents who are very sexually frustrated or very lacking in interpersonal relationships. They are very frustrated and they projected their frustration outwards, right? In the terms of school shootings, things like that, right? So Van Ronde and Taylor said that previously it was primarily a white Caucasian culture, but unfortunately we received a case last year, right? If anyone remembered, then I would say that this is a kind of emergent manifestation, right? Because previously we don't have those, we don't have this issue of mass shooting or mass killing, but because of the emergent nature of our psyche, perhaps things have to be done, things have to be addressed with what our children and our adolescents are consuming, and to educate them that there are so many things, so many steps from so many steps. With the last step is to gain a partner. Before that, you have to prepare yourself, enrich yourself, things like that, right? But the hyper masculinity products that are sold by these online influencers, things like that, they essentially is I would say as a bait for this adolescent, for these young adults. So they want to skip all the steps, and when they followed with the products, the online courses, but they still haven't got any partner, they got very frustrated and they projected the frustration outwards. And I think one of the manifesto written by one of the involuntary celibate patient is that the only way that I can show my masculinity, the only way to show that I am a man is by doing these horrible things, right? So these are unfortunately a grim depiction of emergent cultural motives being activated. Means that we even different cultures can import cultures from other cultures, right? Because we are getting more globalized, things like that, right? So relevant for me is that there's a need to educate our children and our young adolescents about this, right? About mythopoiesis, right? You know, Joseph Campbell is also an anthropologist. He is credited with the idea of monomyth, right? So he investigated many myths, and he came up with this kind of pattern, right? So in many mythological or folklores or mythological symbols, right, you have to defeat the dragon first, then you get the eternal bride, right? So, but the inversion of it, because we are not educated enough with these treasures of our past, we want to get the bride first, but we don't want to get the tiger, right? There's always a recurring theme is that, you know, as even the dragon turned into the eternal bride, the heavenly bride, right? The moral of the story is that you have to defeat the dragon first, which is yourself first, and then you can see better. You get your entire perspective orientation is shifted, right? But unfortunately, this happened, right, because of the mythopoietic capacity, because we are no longer, in terms with our cultural mythology or symbols that provide us with all of these important treasures. Unfortunately, grim things happen, right? So, little bit on dream interpretation. So, we also do, because several patients will say that I have a dream. Let's talk about your dream, right? So, dream interpretation is also one of the techniques that are used by Jungian analysts, right? So there are several techniques, things like that. But in this book, which is Wacana Psychology, Psyche and Reality, I contributed 2 of them. I actually the editor. Dr. Akram also contributed 2 of the subchapters here, right? And one of the chapter is about integrating the mechanism of dream interpretation from the perspective, from psychoanalysis perspective. I also provided some of the cultural standings, the neuroscientific basis of dream interpretation, and also several examples, right, with the consent of the patient. That Persian caricature is actually related to one of the clinical example that I encountered, which I think we don't have any time to elaborate on that. Perhaps if you have the chance, you can get the book later, all right? So basically, we are reaching at the end of the talk. I would say that in conclusion, the greatest myth of our time is that myths are just myths, right? But they are not, right? They are alive and kicking, right? When the stronger that we try to push them over, the stronger they will kick. Then we will kick us back in the wrong, I would say, right? So hence, the importance for me as a clinician is to understand the background of my patient, right? The challenges are many, right? So of course, with the Muslims and also the Catholics, it's a bit well controlled, because Muslims usually they go for a certified traditional healer, all right? And I have one patient who is a Catholic. They have to appeal to the Archdiocese, and then the Archdiocese of Kuala Lumpur have to appeal to the Vatican in order for exorcism to happen, right? But we have growing trends where the Chinese and the Indians also have, I would say, a new trend, right? They are, for example, some of my Chinese patients, they are involved with Tantric Buddhism in Taiwan. So for us clinicians, we have to update our information, so our understanding about the culture, so we can understand better, and we can say that, oh, whether this is just a cultural belief or whether this is really delusion or psychotic symptoms, right? So that's why for me, as a psychiatrist, as a clinician, I always have to update my knowledge about cultural myths and symbols. And also for all of the audience is to always understand that the myths are alive and kicking, all right? And I think that's it from me, all right? Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. We already have 1 hour. Very insightful sharing session, lecture as well from our guest speaker today. So, what I can recap as a conclusion, see from the myth that been delivered by Dr. Sidi just now. Okay, kita melihat bagaimana manusia itu sendiri, we are the human as what one of the Austrian thinker Ernest Cassirer said. We are the human being is animal symbolicum. Okay, the person, the man who are able to interpret symbol by cultures, by belief, religions, and so on and so forth. Jadi saya kira di sini pengamatan ataupun our conception terhadap mythos itu, I hope from this lecture this evening everybody get some sort of paradigm shift, sedikit anjakan tentang our persepsi, our thought about myth. Mungkin sebelum ini kita melihat myth sekadar kita sebut sebagai superficial, dongeng. But beyond dongeng itu ada beberapa pendekatan-pendekatan yang sangat significant with earth, human. Okay, from I think we are the very unique creature created by the gods. Jadi according to my studies also, ada seorang semioticians, very prominent semiotician from France. Kalau siapa yang biasa dengan Roland Barthes, he wrote a book, a very good book entitled Mythologies. And he explained everything beyond the myth that we know, myth as myth, but beyond myth itu ada beberapa sumber-sumber kebenaran, ada sumber significant values. Sometimes they are originated from religions, from culture, from anthropological aspect. Jadi I think I open our next phase. Okay, if the viewers have any suggestions, any questions to our speakers, okay, boleh diajukan pertanyaan. Okay, introduce yourself and then maybe you can ask anything, okay, regarding the topics that we have discussed today. Okay, so I open the floor, okay, for the viewers untuk okay, dibuat pertanyaan apa sahaja, or maybe you have suggestion or any arguments, okay, or some of you may not disagree. Okay, any thoughts? Yes, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for bringing this discourse in this evening, this afternoon. It's very fascinating lecture, such a joy to listen to. So I keep thinking about how modern societies love to imagine themselves as fundamentally rational and disenchanted compared to ancient civilizations. Yet we still seem to reproduce the same symbolic structures over and over again. We see that ancient societies had its narratives of creation, run the gamut of flawed myths, human made of clay, and to the cosmic acts, and so on and so forth. And in this day and age, we have climate apocalypse narrative. We have AI takeover fears, collapse discourse, and technological salvation. So if we venture to say the myth itself does not disappear, but it migrated into its secular forms, even if, I feel like the whole, like the creation anxiety around AI is like a little bit too Promethean for me, where humanity creating something powerful that may eventually transcend or turn against its creators. So to me, it naturally begs the question, especially from psychoanalysis perspective, even more so. So are these generally new anxieties produced by modernity, or are we witnessing our ancient archetypal patterns re-emerging through technological and political language because the underlying psychological tensions themselves never really went away? Thank you.
That's a very, very good question. One passage that come immediately to my mind, Dr. Thank you very much for the question. Right? So Dr. Akram here is a translator of Nietzsche, and immediately I remember the passage from, I think, the Gay Science. I think that the parable of God is that. Is it from the Gay Science?
Gay Science.
Gay Science. Gay is mean happy, right? No, and again, all right. So it's a parable where somewhat suddenly go to the marketplace and then screaming, God is dead, God is dead, right? So and then he went on saying that now we have killed the God, from which compass that we have to go north, south, west, east, and what more rituals that we have to create to fill on the gap, right? God is dead, God is dead. But now where is we heading? Basically, I don't remember the exact passage, right? So and I think that relates to your question, right? Where the people are getting it is a very accurate term that you use, disenchanted, right? Where people are disenchanted from their past, they have the urge to create new mythologies, right? To fill in the gap, right? But here's the thing with analysis of archetypes, things like that. Sometimes the myth or the symbols that appear through the analysis is not your, I would say, your primordial archetypes, but it's an inversion of it, right? Sometimes people get confused. Sometimes it's actually not your real self. There's several archetypes playing, right? Instead, the inversion or your shadow is speaking through it. For me, the new themes that is appearing in our modern society is the shadow. Is everything that we are feared, we are scared of, right? So it's not really a myth in the sense of sublime or empyrean as before. It's just a stopgap measure. It's something that we create to at least objectify our anxiety, something that we can project our fears on, right? So in terms of archetypes, I would think that the new mythologies are actually an inversion and inverted the shadow form of the original archetypes. Then the solution will remain the same. That is to further analyze. I'm not sure how to do psychoanalysis at the collective level and society level, but we as a society have to meditate. If before the days of before, the myths are very empyrean, very luhur, I would say, very sublime. It's about this perpetual cycle of rebirth and death and rebirth. Now the myth of today is very disturbing, very apocalyptic, right? So this is something that we have to ponder on as a society. Did I answer your question? I think there's a second part of it that I haven't answered. Have I answered it? Okay. Right?
Maybe I add something. Now, I think now myth emerge with the unprecedented paradigm. You can see the new myth that we are created is artificial intelligence. See how the machine and the deep learning try to to kuasai kita itu kan. Okay, one of the aspect. Maybe we are creating the myth, but from the machines. I think this term been discussed by Alan Turing when he wrote, "Can machine think?" And now we can see the proof. Machine can think, have a consciousness that we call as a super intelligence. And maybe this is some challenge that we human beings have to face it. Okay. But what Dr. Sidi said just now, okay, the terms of shadow, I think is coined by Young also. Okay, so the shadow is I think the substance to be material for Earth to think, for Earth to wonder about. Okay, so thank you very much for your very insightful questions. Okay, ada lagi soalan? Any questions? Any opinions? Or maybe any suggestions to us the panel? Yeah, Mr. Please. Okay, maybe you can introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Scott. I'm curious about what the aim is. Is the aim to revive these old myths, to to keep them alive, to be more cognizant of the fact that they still exist, or whatever. And because in my view, I would think the point of myths, and as societies evolve and change, is that our point is to continuously break myths, shatter them, fracture them, and then recreate them anew. Whether that's to convey fears or try to ground ourselves, I'm not exactly sure, but as someone who embraces globalization to a certain extent, and I think there's sort of a beauty in it, while there is, of course, a horribleness to it as well. The best possible option would be to continually shatter mythologies in order to create better or larger or more inclusive, encompassing myths. So, any thoughts on that?
It's a very good question, right, Mr. Scott. I would say that we can try to break the myths and to achieve ever more advanced and advanced paradigm. But when the night comes, the old creatures of yore will come back, and this is what is happening with my patients. There were surgeons, there were businessmen, there were really successful people, right? They are I would say, the vanguard of our society, pushing our still relatively young society as a nation to the limits, right? But at the end of the day, they'll still come to the consultation room and say their anxieties, right? For me, it's not just about breaking myths, but it is to live together with myths, the myths of the yesterday and the myths that we are trying to create in the future, right? There is always a meaning behind everything, right? And I would say the aim of myth is that it represents, as Young say, as in a way to represent the one-sidedness of our conscious life in a symbolical and universal way, right? So the aim, at least in the therapy session, is for us to have a good understanding on the myths, so we can interpret and we can analyze their issues, right? That is from the micro level, which means that the aim is for integration. So someone who afflicted by Juanism really is precocious, things like that. They would have frequent memories of catacombs, the goddess Kali, things like that. Some very scary myth and symbol which actually represent the mother complex, the mother archetype, right? So we have, the aim is to ask why this myth appears to you, and then to integrate it. It's just you find that your mother is very not your specific or literal mother, but you found that the attachment is very fearful, so that you always have to move from one to another, right? Because the mother itself, to sustain a relationship, is too fearful. It's like engulfing, devouring, right? So that's why they cannot achieve a sustainable relationship. That's from the micro level. It's aiming for integration. At the macro level is for us to live side by side with our society, and most importantly is to understand its importance. If not, if some people, they will come only during the night, some people will come even the morning. It's like Trump, I don't know, he's like dreaming in the morning or not, right? So if we push our consciousness or our one-sidedness to the max, then it will not start bothering you during the night, but it will also be like mengigau during morning, or having nightmares while waking, right? So we don't want that, all right? So I hope I can I answered quite sufficiently on the question, Mr. Scott. But thank you very much for the question. Yeah.
Anyone else? Concerns, opinions? No. Last question.
Just asking because you're talking about archetype, right? But how about like Islamic psychologists, like terms the cults, nafs, and rules? Because the cult is, you find meanings on it, and the nafs is how you project your desires, right? How do you relate and compare between these two terms?
Again, there's a whole metaphysical discussion on that, especially in the line of Islamic mysticism. It's not just in ethics about cult, ruh, and nafs. So there are these, again, I would see that the cult, nafs, and ruh is like a parallel towards the concepts that Jung himself introduced. So they are yourself, your shadow, your anima or animus, and yourself, your self in the capital letter. Alright. So I would say again, there is a recurrent of the same process going on, right? Because I think the many personalities of ourselves is a universal concept, just like everyone from here to Russia know about the concept of cat, and that's how everyone in the world knows about the concept of a self that is, that is governing the desire, a self that is governing the spiritual illumination, things like that. And it relating again to my clinical my clinical practice. So when we got into session with patients with severe personality disorders, they were totally unable to integrate all of these sites. So we have like we call it as modes, right? So they can be, that's why they can be very unpredictable. They can scream at you on one day, but tomorrow give you gifts, things like that, because they have different modes of themselves which are not integrated, right? And I would say that in answering to your question, it is there is a parallel between this division of the self according to Jung, and also the division of the soul as in Islamic metaphysics or Islamic ethics, right? So I would say there is a close parallel, right? Again, it's like everyone knows the concept of cat, so and that's why everyone in the world also knows about the division or subdivision of the self, but they manifested it different names.
I'll be the second one to ask from also publisher. Maybe I can ask him personally, but it's okay. I'm keen to ask you, some psychiatrists understand, or they subject that this hysteria that happens to the Malay society, they are considered sometimes as mental disorder. But what's your opinion on asking why does this hysteria only happens to the Malay Muslims? Why not it doesn't go bound across the other cultures? And yeah, can you explain that from myth and your understanding?
Yeah. And firstly, Anaf, the mass hysteria does not happen just in the Malay society. The specific manifestation of it only happen in Malays. We have the old story about Rumpelstiltskin, about the Rumpelstiltskin or the Piper, is it the Piper playing Pied Piper, right? And then the ushering all the children went out from it. It's the same. And there's also we have the Sydenham's Korea. Described after an incident in England, I think in 1700s, where everyone started to dance, right? So this mass psychodelic illness happens in all cultures, but the different manifestation differs across culture. So just like lycanthropy, right? So in England it's lycanthropy, in Russia it's bear, and in our side of the world it's about tiger. It's the same with hysteria, right? And that's the answer, because it depends on your cultural prototypes, right? So we are more closely associated with the gene, with the possession, right? That's why the manifestation revolve around possession, right? And I'm going to answer, and then maybe a second follow-up from the question would be how do we differentiate between psychotic symptoms and also cultural beliefs? So our current paradigm is, I would say, actually quite an unfinished or inadequate or even insufficient. Right now, our paradigm is that when the cultural beliefs is being shared by others, right? So it will not count as psychotic or a psychiatric disorder. So things like when the people are talking about santau, black magic, things like that, as long as it is being shared by the society, by the community, we would not call it as a psychotic disorder, right? But again, here's the challenge, right? So what are the criteria that, in the world that becoming more globalized, things like that, the distinction between a cultural shared belief and the psychiatric symptoms are getting more blurred, right? Especially in societies or in religions that previously don't have the theme, right? So I'm going to put one example. It's involving a Protestant patient of mine who actually, among the Protestant, they don't have this more formalized way of sainthood, as in Catholics. So they have these born again experiences, things like that. So how do we differentiate between really born again experience with a manic episode, right? So manic describes a psychotic state where people, a psychiatric condition where people will have a very inflated self-esteem, that will proclaim themselves God, things like that, right? I've seen cases that, in confusing between these two phenomena, between born again and manic disorder, it would incur serious consequences. I remembered that when I was on call, and I found like two couples like very, very suspicious, and then when from their words they keep mentioning about their children, their two-year-old child, I say, please, you are not coming for the child, and it is indeed about the child, and it is about the manic break, and confusing between which one is it is born again or and please God, please you don't do anything to the child, and actually they did. I remembered I sprinted back to my home after solving the case, and I have to look at my child, right? So what I'm trying to say is that the study about differentiating between what is psychiatric phenomenon and what is a cultural belief are still lacking. So the only way that we have is the operationalized or functional paradigm. If the belief is shared, so it's a cultural belief. But if they are no longer functioning, they can't work, they're involved in issues, interpersonal issues, financial issues, then we have to treat, we have to step in. Right? Contoh, if the history is so bad, very disorganized, aggressive, then we have to step in to treat, right? But I do have several patients who we believe that because they are so disorganized, we treat, and when we stop the treatment, they can function as normal, which does not which does not reflect our natural, our current understanding about schizophrenia. So schizophrenia should be progressive. When you are not taking medication, then it will be progressive. But this patient, despite how disorganized they were, when we stop the medication, they can able to function, right? So I would say enough that the current paradigm is that, but the details on it are still lacking, right? Maybe we can approach the Darul Shifa and do like an open grounded theory study, right, to ask the phenomenological differences between delusion and things like that. But of course, I know it takes this topic is I think equivalent with a PhD, right? So we need more people to investigate on that. But unfortunately, we don't have any, right? We don't have any experts on it. The closest would be McGill in Canada. So yeah, the evidence is still lacking, lah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I actually understood about it has been dispersed among each respective cultures. I meant to ask actually that why the Indians have their own, the Chinese have their own, and so on. So since you already answered, so I have a subsequent question. So can we actually cross the medications according to the culture? It means that would it be possible if the Muslims are treating the Indians' culture disorder, if your medication can apply to all inclusive of races and cultures, would it be possible if the Indians are treating by their cultures to the Malays, Muslims, and cross sections of these cultures? Would that be possible?
I would say that it will be difficult, right? Because culture is not just by profession, but you have your belief, which is on the psychological part, and the more deeper part is your substratum, your years and years of being exposed to it, right? So I would say the cultural memory it would be unavailable to different type of people, right? So I would say it's very difficult, right? So that's why I think in the West we have people who are really well versed in their respective belief to come in, right? So in our center we call it Ustad, we call it the father, right? To assess whether this is authentic or not, right? For me, in this case, there are certain boundaries that we should not cross, or we cannot cross, or there are better people to equip with it. So we would leave it to the experts lah, basically, right? So medication is because because everyone shared more or less the same biological system, right? But the cultural, you have the specific cultural memories, belief system, which would be different, right? You have, let's say, the West are dualistic, the Eastern are more monotheistic or relationalistic, right? The West is more individualistic, things like that, right? They might converge to a certain point, but they would not cross, right? Or very difficult to cross, right? Or if they cross, it might be that after 2 or 3 generations of assimilation, things like that, right? So for us, we will reserve it to the experts. We will call in the experts. One of my consultant Ttdi said that we have to call in Ghostbuster as well, if there's need arise, right? But it shows how much we leave it to the experts lah.
Alright, anything else? Anyone? No? Alright, yeah, with that, we'd like to thank you for both speakers for your presentation today. We hope that you guys enjoyed our presentation and program here. Just to inform that A Vision of Unity is just less than 40 books are available, and after this it will be out of print. And we are joining the Pesta Buku Antarabangsa Kuala Lumpur International Book Festival, a book fair in Kuala Lumpur, WGCKL. So you can meet us there in Dewan Tun Razak 3, 3rd floor. We'll be selling books that are available. Alright, yeah, there's a Manusia Modern Pencarian Jiwa, Wacana Psychology, Psyche and Reality. And also we have some other books that we'll be selling in our booth. Yeah, so follow us in Facebook and other media social. Hit us up if you got any concerns and questions. Meet us in the PBI KL in the end of this month, start from 29th to 7th of June. Alright, thank you very much. That's all from us. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you very much.
Boleh? Kami boleh. Oh, dah kat buku tu ya? Dia kena formal. Ni. Kita